Smoke rose over the green hills, shrouding the white stone houses around the tall watchtower and the blood-red sails that dotted the gray, choppy seas beyond in a veil of gray. Thick, boiling plumes billowed from burning roofs, and figures darted between the white walls of the coastal village, while cries of alarm and war rose over the crackle of the flames. I glanced to my right and left as Rotifer, Farrar, and Santos moved up through the trees to either side. Gunny Taylor was just past Santos, falling in at roughly the center of our loose skirmish line, and he stepped up to an ancient, wind-twisted oak, laid his M110 in the fork of a low limb, and took a moment to survey the situation through his scope. I followed suit, getting behind a mossy rock and laying my own M110 in a slight trough in the stone. The rest of the platoon, along with Math Gommon's small warband, got down and scanned the fishing village. We'd ridden as fast as some of us could ride horses from the city of Athon-Ree as soon as the smoke had begun to rise from the headland and the bells had sounded the alarm. There hadn't been time to brief the situation in detail, even if the Tuatha Da Riamag had all the details. They might have. They're a perilous people, and they know things that seem impossible to us mere Recon Marines. But there still hadn't been time. Now I got a sight picture full of a large man, pale and brown-haired, with a spade of a beard and shaved upper lip, wearing quilted armor and a bronze helmet with black wings rising from its rim. The sword in his hand tapered to a wicked point, and his hexagonal shield was faced with hide, painted in a dragon design with a long, twisted tongue. I watched as he pointed toward the tall, white limestone guard tower that doubled as a lighthouse for the headland, guarding the entrance to the great bay where Athon-Ree sat. Arrows rained down from the tower where most of the fishermen and their families had fled as the corsairs landed. But a knot of fully 24 men, their shields interlocked above their heads, were moving toward the base of the tower. They were all dressed and armed similarly to the giant with the black wings on his helmet, though to varying degrees of richness. They weren't the savage Dovos we'd fought up north. They wore more than skins, and they carried considerably finer weapons and equipment. I doubted that the Dovos could make the passage across that vast sea between the land of ice and monsters and the Isle of Riamag anyway. There were a lot of them, though, and while an army of Tuatha was behind us, in glittering armor and carrying swords that could probably cleave through any one of these men from shoulder to crotch without slowing down, we were 21 men, counting Math Gommon and his 5 companions, against probably 200 reavers who were either besieging the tower or running amok through the village, burning and pillaging. Gunny's first shot was the signal to open the ball. I watched his bullet tear through the big man's quilted gambeson, and the man staggered, looking down uncomprehendingly at the growing red stain in his side. I followed up Gunny's shot with one of my own, slightly higher and more to the center line. Gunny had hit him, but the bullet hadn't dropped him. Mine blasted through his sternum, and he dropped. My rifle wasn't really an M110, not technically. It was the closest thing that King Caedmon's Koira Ansek, an artifact that looked like a gigantic golden cauldron, had produced from my mental image of one. It was balanced a little differently, and the forearm was something closer to M-lock than the Picatinny rail mine had had on it. It probably functioned a bit better than an actual M110, too. My original M110 had been left behind on the USS Macon Island when we'd inserted, heading to Norway, but ultimately bound for this strange, spooky world, where we'd found ourselves fighting for our lives with nothing but M4s, knives, and guts against monsters, savages, and sorcery. I transitioned to another raider even as an arrow as long as my arm smashed through his shield and into his teeth from above. Those Tuatha bows were nothing to sniff at.